What if the most important battlefield in the Middle East wasn't the sky or the sea or even the streets? What if it was a room full of servers, coffee cups, backup generators, and one blinking screen that could shut down half a defense grid before sunrise? Yeah, not exactly the Hollywood version. No giant death ray, no villain stroking a cat, just code, signals, and a handful of people who know that pressing one key at the right second can hit harder than a missile. And that's what makes this story so creepy. Because while most people are asleep, or scrolling, or reheating leftover pizza at 1 a.m., modern war is starting to look less like tanks smashing through borders, and more like invisible hands reaching inside a country's nervous system. Tonight's story begins with a rumor so wild it sounds made up even by internet standards. A U.S. Navy SEAL assault team, inserted under total blackout conditions, hits an Iranian cyber warfare center believed to be coordinating attacks, spoofing radar, and feeding false signals into regional defense networks. And then, just minutes later, Iranian defense systems start dropping like streetlights in a thunderstorm. That's the headline. But here's the twist. The raid itself wasn't really about blowing up a building. It was about silence. Because if you can silence the machine behind the missiles, you don't just stop one attack. You blind the hand reaching for the next one. U.S. Navy SEALs raid. Iranian cyber warfare center. Defense systems collapse. And the craziest part? The shooting was only half the mission. So the other half was already waiting in the wires. Let's be real for a second. When people hear cyber warfare, their eyes kind of glaze over. It sounds distant, nerdy, abstract, like something happening in a basement by guys who haven't seen the sun in 3 days. But cyber warfare isn't abstract when airport systems freeze. It isn't abstract when a hospital gets locked out. It isn't abstract when a radar station sees planes that aren't there, or doesn't see the ones that are. That's when it stops being tech news and starts becoming the kind of thing that makes generals lose sleep. In our story, U.S. intelligence starts picking up a pattern, not one giant attack. That would be too obvious. Instead, 100 little anomalies. A logistics route goes dark for 7 minutes. A regional drone feed stutters at the exact wrong time. Then a command network receives a valid-looking signal with the wrong heartbeat. Nothing catastrophic by itself, just enough weirdness to make analysts lean toward the screen and go, "Hold on, run that again." And then it gets worse. Signals intelligence suggests the source isn't scattered. It's being coordinated through a hardened node tied to Iranian cyber operators. Part server farm, part command post, part battlefield switchboard. Think of it like the conductor of an orchestra, except the instruments are drones, surveillance feeds, spoof transmissions, and panic. Now here's where the story turns. The Pentagon doesn't just worry that this center is collecting information. They worry it's preparing the digital version of opening the floodgates. If the node stays online, it could help cue missile launches, hide troop movement, jam communications, or dump fake targets into the system at the exact moment real aircraft move in. And once that chain reaction starts, good luck stuffing the toothpaste back in the tube. So the question becomes simple. Do you keep playing defense against the ghost in the network? Or do you go straight for the room where the ghost is being fed? That answer, apparently, was already on a helicopter. But getting there? That was the part almost nobody was supposed to survive. People imagine Navy SEAL raids as pure chaos. Doors kicked in, muzzle flashes everywhere, shouting, explosions, the whole action movie package. Sometimes it is. But the scariest missions? They're quiet. Quiet enough that the target doesn't even know the attack has started. In this scenario, the team is launched under total emission control. No unnecessary chatter. No digital breadcrumbs. Even the route is weird. Layered, indirect, misleading. If anyone is watching, they see noise, fragments, shadows. The target sits outside the image most people have in their head when they hear Cyber Warfare Center. It's not some shiny sci-fi bunker glowing blue underground. It's uglier than that, more believable. A hardened compound, reinforced walls, buried fiber lines, backup generators, cooling systems, security teams who probably thought the biggest threat would come from the sky. That assumption, well, that's where things began to crack. The assault force isn't just carrying rifles. They're carrying purpose-built kits for a very specific job. Breach, isolate, capture drives if possible, destroy critical racks if not, and most important of all, hold the site long enough for another team. Is one you'll never see on camera to get inside the system. That's the thing people miss. A raid like this isn't just smash and grab. It's smash, freeze, copy, cut, confirm, and disappear before the whole region wakes up. As the team closes in, external defenses start waking up. Thermal sensors, patrol loops, hardened checkpoints. Nothing too dramatic. Just enough layers to turn hesitation into a funeral. One sentry drops without a sound. A camera feed loops. A gate opens half an inch too cleanly. Then the SEALs are inside. No speech, no movie line, no go, go, go for the trailer. Just movement. The first building is a shell, a decoy. Admin rooms, bunks, utility closets. The real site is below, hidden behind reinforced doors and shielded corridors designed to buy time if the place is ever hit. And that's when they realize something ugly. And yet the operators inside knew they might be bombed. They never expected to be touched by hand, which meant, for a few seconds, just a few, the advantage belonged to the raiders. And in missions like this, a few seconds is basically a lifetime. But then someone in the control room hits the alarm, and now the whole clock changes. This is where the story gets weird in the best way, because the center of the battle isn't some throne room. It's a server hall. Cold air, cable trays, concrete, buzzing fans, rows and rows of machines doing the invisible work of war. Honestly, if you walked in there without context, you might think you were touring a data center for a boring telecom company. Except this place is feeding targeting data, processing battlefield traffic, packaging disinformation, relaying attack instructions, and managing the kind of digital interference that can make an air defense operator trust the wrong screen at the worst possible time. It's not glamorous, it's deadly. The SEALs split fast. One element locks down stairwells, one clears adjacent rooms, one moves for the core. A technician attached to the assault package, again, not the guy Hollywood cast on the poster, but probably the most important person in the room, starts identifying the real nerve racks from the decoys. Because of course there are decoys. The Iranians built this place to survive bombs, sabotage, and cyber intrusion. So some servers are mirrors, some are traps, some are designed to wipe themselves if touched. Pull the wrong drive, trip the wrong switch, and you don't just lose evidence, you lose your chance to understand what was already sent out. And that's the nightmare. Not what's in the room, what already left it. The team plugs in, data starts moving. Fast, but not fast enough. Outside, the compound is waking up. Quick reaction forces are mobilizing. Communication lines are trying to reroute. Somebody, somewhere, is screaming into a radio asking why the underground node just went half blind. Inside the hall, one rack goes dark, then another, then another. Not from bullets, from command. Because the American side came with a second hammer, and this was it. The raid wasn't just built to destroy the physical site. It was designed to create a tiny window, a crack in the armor, so a synchronized cyber operation could slip through exposed pathways, seize live links, poison trusted channels, and force connected defense systems to question themselves. Yeah, and that's what collapse looks like in modern war. Not always fire, not always rubble. Sometimes it looks like every machine in the room suddenly asking, "Can I trust what I'm seeing?" And if the answer becomes no, the whole chain starts choking itself. Then the first external radar station drops offline. And suddenly this isn't a raid anymore. It's a countdown. This is the part everybody online would clip and turn into a thumbnail. Defense grid down. Iran blinded. SEAL Team 6 changed the war. But real collapse, well, fictionalized real collapse here, is messier than the headline. It starts small. A battery gets stale coordinates. A tracking screen freezes on a ghost target. An encrypted link fails authentication. A backup network comes online, but inherits poisoned data from the primary one. And that's how panic spreads in systems built on trust. And military networks run on trust the way your body runs on oxygen. Think of it like this. If your brain suddenly couldn't tell whether your left foot was real, whether your eyes were lying, and whether your hand belonged to you, you wouldn't slow down. You'd lock up. That's what happens to a defense web when sensors, command nodes, and weapon systems stop agreeing on reality. One officer orders a reset. Another orders a hold fire. A third thinks the hold fire command itself is fake. Now layer in the human part. Fatigue. Noise. Adrenaline. Fear of being the one who lets the enemy through. Fear of being the one who fires at the wrong thing. And just like that, a high-tech shield starts acting like a group chat after midnight. Everybody talking. Nobody sure who's right. Yes, and one bad message wrecking the whole mood. Meanwhile, inside the cyber center, the assault force is running out of time. The copy is incomplete. The demolition charges are set. Incoming forces are closing. Do they stay longer for more data, or do they accept the ugly truth that in operations like this, perfect is the fastest way to die? They choose survival. One final sweep, one final confirmation burst, one final detonation chain, then they move. Seconds later, the underground facility erupts. not in some giant fireball you can see from space, but in a brutal internal kill. Power loss, thermal shock, system destruction, severed links, dead cooling, cooked hardware. And outside the compound, the wider network starts eating itself alive. Some sites go dark, some isolate, some fall back to manual. And some keep transmitting garbage like a broken compass spinning in circles. That's the phrase that would define the next few hours. Not defeated, not erased, disoriented. And sometimes in war, disoriented is all it takes. Because if your defenses lose confidence for even 10 minutes, 10 minutes is enough for everything else to move. And something else was moving. Something the Cyber Center had been built to stop. By morning, nobody agrees on what happened. Some call it sabotage. Some call it a precision raid. Some deny it outright. Some claim the whole story is enemy propaganda, which honestly is exactly what modern conflict looks like now. The explosion is one battle. The story about the explosion is another. Iranian channels push one version. Western analysts push another. Anonymous accounts start posting leaks. Half of them are recycled, some are fake, a few are close enough to true to be dangerous. And regular people? They're stuck doing what everybody does now, staring at glowing rectangles, trying to decide which version of reality feels least broken. That might be the most important part of this whole story. Because even if a raid like this succeeds tactically, it opens a bigger question. Have we crossed into a kind of warfare where the first thing to collapse isn't a building? It's certainty? In our fictional scenario, the answer is yes. The SEALs make it out. Barely. The facility is wrecked. The captured data reveals planned cyber escalations, proxy links, and attack pathways aimed at soft targets. Ports, hospitals, logistics hubs, maybe even the kind of systems normal people never think about until they stop working. And suddenly, the raid means more than one night's success. It means the battlefield was never just overseas. It was everywhere the network touched. Your bank, your power, your water, your phone, your hospital, your shipping lane, your city traffic grid on a Monday morning when you're already late and coffee somehow costs $9 now. That's the uncomfortable payoff. We like to imagine elite raids as the moment the good guys kick in the door and solve the problem. But the truth is, even in victory, they're usually buying time. Time for diplomats, time for cyber teams, time for air defenses to reset, time for intelligence agencies to figure out what else is hiding behind the curtain. Time, basically, for the adults in the room to stop the next disaster before it becomes a headline. And that's why this story sticks. Not because it's loud, because it's quiet. A handful of operators enter a building most people will never hear of, touch machines most people will never see, and for one brief window, the balance of a region tilts on whether those machines stay honest. That's modern war. Not always the boom. Sometimes the blink. So if the next conflict looks confusing, fragmented, and weirdly digital, that's because it will be. Maybe already is. And if you've made it this far, here's the question I want you to drop in the comments. In the next big war, what matters more? Who controls the skies, or who controls the signal? If you want more military breakdowns, future war scenarios, and stories that explain the chaos without sounding like a textbook, hit subscribe and stick around, because the next battlefield might not be where anyone expects.